Introduction. Between faith and folly, the healing ways of the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages, the time where illness was seen not just as a physical ailment but as a cosmic punishment, a spiritual test, or even a curse. In an era without microscopes, antibiotics, or vaccines, people relied on a strange blend of religion, superstition, and primitive science to survive. Physicians were as likely to consult the stars or holy scriptures as they were to examine symptoms. Herbalists, monks, village healers, and even barbers took on the sacred duty of healing, armed with little more than tradition, intuition, and a smattering of ancient texts. Pain and suffering were constant companions of medieval life. Disease spread easily, and death was a familiar shadow. Yet out of this darkness emerged methods, some ingenious, some bizarre, that sought to cure the incurable. From bloodletting to prayers, from amulets to herbal brews, medieval medicine was a curious dance between fear and faith, hope and helplessness. 1. Bloodletting. One of the most commonly used treatments during the Middle Ages, bloodletting was based on the ancient belief in the four humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. It was thought that an excess of any humour caused illness, and the solution, especially for fevers, inflammations, or melancholy, was to drain the body of its surplus blood. This was typically done by cutting a vein or applying leeches to the skin. The procedure varied depending on the disease, the season, and even the position of the moon. Elaborate charts told practitioners which vein to open and how much blood to let. Rich nobles often kept prized leeches, imported from sacred rivers, as part of their private healing kits. In some monasteries, bloodletting was performed regularly, believed to be a way to purify the body and soul. While this practice sometimes resulted in fainting or even death, it persisted for centuries, ingrained in medical doctrine. Bloodletting represents the deep medieval desire to restore balance between body and spirit, sin and redemption, life and death. 2. Leech therapy. Leeches, slimy, silent, and sinister, were the unsung heroes of medieval medicine. Their role in therapy was closely tied to bloodletting but considered a gentler, more precise method. In an age without antiseptics or sterile tools, leeches offered a living, natural instrument for drawing blood with minimal incision. Their saliva, unbeknownst to medieval practitioners, contains anticoagulants, which helped keep blood flowing smoothly. Monks, barbers, and apothecaries applied leeches to patients suffering from ailments like hypertension, fevers, skin infections, and even headaches. The belief was that by allowing leeches to draw tainted blood, the body could be restored to its natural balance. Sometimes, they were placed strategically behind the ears, on temples, or near inflamed joints. In cases of sore eyes, leeches might even be applied to the delicate tissues around the eye socket, a horrifying thought today, but considered effective then. Leeches were so valued that specific rivers, especially in Eastern Europe, became famous for producing medicinal breeds. These leeches were gathered, preserved in jars, and sold in local markets or by traveling healers. A healthy leech collection was a prized asset in noble households and monasteries alike. Leech therapy wasn't without risk. Infections could occur, and some patients suffered severe blood loss if the feeding went unchecked. Still, the eerie image of monks tending quietly to their leech-filled jars paints a vivid picture of how desperation and faith interwove to form the fragile web of medieval healing. 3. Herbal remedies. If there was one aspect of medieval medicine that has withstood the test of time, it is the use of herbs. In a world bereft of pharmaceuticals, the forests, meadows, and monastery gardens were the pharmacies of the age. Healing herbs were catalogued, grown, foraged, and passed down in oral traditions or lovingly copied into herbal manuscripts such as the famous Herbarium Apuleius. Each plant was believed to possess certain virtues aligned with the four humours or influenced by planetary forces. For instance, chamomile was considered cooling and used for fevers and digestive issues, while rosemary was linked to memory and the brain. Garlic was a go-to remedy for infections and parasites, and comfrey, also known as knit bone, was believed to accelerate the healing of broken bones and bruises. Monks often played a crucial role as both cultivators and physicians, growing medicinal plants in cloistered gardens and preparing infusions, tinctures, and poultices for the sick. The physic garden became a symbol of both spiritual and physical renewal. Recipes might include combinations like wormwood and mint for stomach complaints or fennel and rose water to soothe the eyes. But herbal medicine was not without superstition. Certain plants were harvested only under specific moon phases or accompanied by prayers and rituals to enhance their potency. Mandrake root, shaped like a human body, was thought to scream when pulled from the ground and had to be harvested with extreme caution, often with the aid of a dog. While many of these beliefs were mystical in nature, modern science has validated the medicinal value of numerous herbs used in the Middle Ages. The use of herbal remedies in medieval times was not just a medical practice, but a deeply symbolic act that tied the human body to the rhythms of the earth, the stars, and the divine. Trepanation, skull drilling. Few treatments from the Middle Ages conjure as much horror and fascination as trepanation, the act of drilling or scraping a hole into the human skull. Though it dates back to prehistoric times, this practice continued well into medieval Europe, believed to release evil spirits, reduce pressure in the skull, or cure conditions like epilepsy, migraines, and mental illness. Trepanation was performed using rudimentary tools, a sharp knife, an auger, or even a fire-heated rod. The patient, rarely sedated beyond perhaps a herbal sedative like henbane, was held down as the surgeon carefully removed a section of the skull. The exposed brain underneath was thought to be the seat of madness, imbalance, or demonic possession, and the whole a necessary portal for healing. Often, the procedure was surrounded by religious rituals. Prayers were chanted, relics were present, and holy water was sprinkled to bless the act. For many, it was a last resort, a terrifying option chosen only when all other remedies failed. Remarkably, archaeological evidence shows that some patients survived these procedures, with signs of bone regrowth visible around the trepanned holes. Monastic healers, battlefield surgeons, and traveling bone setters might all have attempted this grim craft. Though gruesome, trepanation symbolized the desperation and boldness of medieval medicine, a willingness to literally open the mind to heal the body. Today, it stands as a chilling yet awe-inspiring testament to the lengths our ancestors went in the pursuit of relief. 5. The healing touch of monks. In a world where hospitals were rare and physicians few, monasteries served as the beating heart of medieval healthcare. Monks were not only spiritual shepherds but often the most educated and medically knowledgeable figures in their communities. Their healing touch extended beyond prayers and scripture. It included a systematic approach to care, hospitality, and rudimentary medicine that made them the unsung heroes of medieval medicine. Monasteries maintained infirmaries for the sick, known as hospitiums, where weary travelers and locals alike could find refuge. Monks would bathe the sick, feed them nourishing broths, and recite prayers over their frail bodies. The belief was that healing came from both divine grace and the monk's selfless service. Many monks copied ancient medical texts from Greek, Roman, and Arabic sources, helping to preserve and disseminate vital knowledge through the centuries. The Benedictine order in particular emphasized care of the sick as a form of spiritual devotion. Their motto, "Care for the sick as if they were Christ," wasn't just a pious saying, it was put into daily practice. Herbs grown in monastery gardens were used in salves, teas, and compresses. Holy water and relics were applied to the afflicted. Silence and order were believed to encourage healing. One of the most mysterious forms of monastic healing was the royal touch, also known as the king's healing hands. Monarchs in France and England were believed to possess a divine gift to heal scrofula, a form of tuberculosis, simply by laying hands on the afflicted. This practice likely evolved from the monks' tradition of healing touch and became part of coronation rites. Though their tools were simple and their understanding limited by theology, monks brought compassion, structure, and a measure of scientific discipline to the chaotic world of medieval medicine. Their legacy lives on in modern hospitals, many of which trace their roots back to these early healing communities. Astrology and medical diagnosis. In the medieval worldview, the body was not an isolated organism but a reflection of the cosmos. Every organ, every humor, and every symptom was believed to be governed by celestial forces. This belief gave rise to a practice where physicians consulted the stars before prescribing treatments, a discipline known as medical astrology. Astrology in medieval medicine was not mere superstition, it was considered a legitimate scientific approach rooted in ancient Greek and Arabic traditions. Renowned thinkers like Galen and Avicenna had emphasized the connection between planetary movements and human health. Physicians carried astrolabes and zodiac charts along with their surgical knives and potions. Before examining a patient, a medieval doctor might first cast a horoscope based on the date and hour of the illness's onset. Each zodiac sign was associated with a specific body part. Aries ruled the head, Taurus the neck, Gemini the arms, and so on down to Pisces, which governed the feet. This zodiac man illustration was a common feature in medieval medical manuscripts. The moon's phase and position were particularly important. For example, it was deemed dangerous to perform surgeries during certain lunar phases or when the moon was in the sign governing the afflicted body part. Treatments such as bloodletting were also timed according to astrological data. A skilled physician might delay a procedure for days if the stars were not favorable. Medical astrology also influenced herbalism. Each plant was thought to be ruled by a planet. Mars governed nettles, Venus ruled roses, Saturn herbs like nightshade. The goal was to balance the patient's internal celestial forces by choosing plants in harmony or opposition to their astrological chart. Though astrology has long since been relegated to the fringe of modern medicine, its integration into medieval diagnosis illustrates how interconnected the natural and supernatural were in the quest for healing. For the people of the Middle Ages, understanding the heavens was not only a way to navigate space and time, it was a means to navigate illness and suffering itself. 7. Amulets and charms in healing. To the medieval mind, disease was often seen as a result of spiritual imbalance, evil influence, or divine punishment. While herbs and surgical procedures treated the body, protection from unseen forces required something different: amulets and charms. These objects, often inscribed with sacred texts, symbols, or the names of saints, were believed to carry protective and curative powers. They were the invisible armor of the medieval world. Worn around the neck, sewn into clothing, or placed beneath pillows, these items were commonly used by both laypeople and clergy. For instance, a cross made of lead or pewter might be worn to ward off plague. Written prayers, especially the Lord's Prayer or Psalm 91, were rolled into tiny scrolls and tucked into pendants. In times of sickness, people would even swallow miniature charms, believing the sacred words would cleanse them from within. Animal bones, teeth, and certain stones were also used as protective amulets. Jet, a black fossilized wood, was believed to repel evil spirits, while amber was thought to protect against fever. Certain gemstones were tied to body parts they were meant to heal, like sapphires for eye disease or garnets for blood conditions. Each item had a symbolic resonance, drawing upon centuries of lore. Monks and folk healers would often bless these items, invoking divine protection. Some amulets were crafted during specific moon phases or feast days to enhance their efficacy. In plague-ridden towns, holy relics, bits of saints' bones or clothing, were paraded through streets or worn by the sick to invoke divine mercy. Of course, the Church sometimes frowned upon what it saw as superstition. The line between faith and folk magic was blurry, and accusations of heresy or witchcraft were not uncommon. Still, in times of fear and desperation, people clung to whatever hope they could hold in their hands. Amulets and charms reveal a medieval world where healing extended beyond medicine into the realms of faith, fear, and magic. They speak to a desire not just to be cured, but to be protected from illness, from evil, and from the unknown forces that haunted the darkness. 8. Healing through prayer and pilgrimage. In an age when medicine often failed to cure and understanding of disease was limited, people of the Middle Ages turned to the divine for healing. The Church, with its deep spiritual influence, offered a path not only for salvation of the soul but also for the mending of the body. Faith, it was believed, could perform miracles where ointments and elixirs could not. Prayer was the first and most accessible form of healing. In small chapels and grand cathedrals alike, the sick and their families would kneel before altars, lighting candles and whispering fervent petitions to God, the Virgin Mary, or a chosen patron saint. Saint Sebastian was invoked during plagues, Saint Apollonia for toothaches, and Saint Roch for skin diseases. Saints served as intercessors, and many believed they held divine power to cure ailments. But some did more than pray, they walked. Pilgrimage became a physical and spiritual journey toward healing. The sick would travel for days or weeks, often at great personal cost, to reach sacred destinations believed to possess miraculous powers. Shrines like Canterbury in England, Santiago de Compostela in Spain, or the tomb of St. Thomas Becket drew multitudes seeking divine intervention. Upon arrival, pilgrims might drink from a holy spring, touch a relic, or sleep in a sacred crypt hoping for a healing dream. Some were carried on stretchers or dragged themselves on hands and knees as a form of penance. These acts were seen as a demonstration of faith, humility, and spiritual purification, prerequisites, it was believed, for receiving divine grace. Monasteries along pilgrimage routes provided food, shelter, and care. Monks would pray over the sick, anoint them with holy oil, and offer spiritual counseling. Sometimes the healing came in the form of recovery, other times it came as peace in death. Though the scientific basis of such practices is non-existent by modern standards, they fulfilled a psychological and communal need. Hope, belief, and ritual gave structure to suffering and made illness bearable. In a world full of uncertainty, faith in divine healing was not just a comfort, it was often the only medicine available. 9. Bathing rituals and holy waters. Contrary to the popular belief that medieval people shunned cleanliness, many understood the health benefits of bathing, especially when it involved sacred or mineral-rich waters. In the Middle Ages, bathing was more than a hygienic act, it was a healing ritual deeply embedded in both medical theory and religious tradition. Healing baths were often recommended by physicians influenced by the ancient humoral theory. Warm water was believed to help balance bodily humors, particularly in cases of melancholy or fever. Herbal baths infused with chamomile, sage, or lavender were used to calm the nerves, reduce inflammation, or ease joint pain. Public bathhouses flourished in many European cities, where both the poor and the wealthy sought relief from their ailments in hot or cold water. But beyond the physical, water was seen as spiritually purifying. Holy wells and sacred springs were visited by pilgrims seeking divine healing. These sites, often tied to saints or miracles, promised cures for blindness, infertility, skin diseases, and more. Some believed that bathing in such waters could cleanse not only the body but also the soul. The waters of Bath in England, for instance, were renowned for their curative properties, attracting invalids from all over the realm. In France, the healing springs of Lourdes became a powerful pilgrimage site. Bathing in these sacred places was accompanied by prayers, fasting, or confession, turning the experience into a full spiritual rite. Even within monasteries, bathing had ritual significance. Monks followed regulated bathing schedules, sometimes accompanied by prayer or silent meditation. Healing pools within monastic hospitals were designed not just for treatment but for spiritual reflection. Water blessed by a priest, holy water, was also sprinkled on the sick, added to drinks, or even bathed in. In times of plague or mass illness, processions would be held to bless rivers or city fountains, hoping to cleanse the land of disease. While modern science separates cleanliness from spirituality, in the Middle Ages the two were intertwined. Bathing rituals and holy waters represent a fascinating blend of medicine, magic, and faith, an attempt to wash away suffering with the blessings of the divine. 10. Healing through music and incantations. In the medieval world, sound was more than a sensory experience, it was a force that could heal, protect, or even exorcise. Long before the scientific study of acoustics or neurology, people believed that music and spoken words held mystical properties. Healing was not only a matter of treating the body, but also of soothing the soul and realigning the spirit. Monasteries were central to the therapeutic use of music. Gregorian chants, sung in deep, resonant tones, were thought to restore inner peace and spiritual order. These chants were not merely artistic expressions, they were considered a direct line to the divine. Monks believed that such music could drive away demons, ease melancholy, and foster healing in the ill. Lay healers and village-wise women also turned to sound, using incantations, rhythmic phrases or prayers spoken aloud, often in Latin or local dialects. These were recited over wounds, during childbirth, or while treating fevers. Incantations might call upon saints, angels, or even ancient pagan deities, blending Christian faith with pre-Christian traditions. Some healers combined music with motion, using rattles, bells, or drums in ritualized healing ceremonies. These were particularly common in rural areas or among communities less influenced by ecclesiastical oversight. The sound was believed to scare off illness-causing spirits or wake up the body's natural healing energies. There are recorded instances of patients being read to from the Psalms as a cure for madness or despair. Words, rhythm, and breath were deeply intertwined with the medieval understanding of health. Just as a body could be sickened by a curse, it could be healed by a blessing or a song. Even instruments had symbolic value. The harp, for instance, was associated with the biblical King David, who soothed Saul's madness through music. In the homes of the noble or devout, music was not only for entertainment but for maintaining harmony, both literal and metaphysical. Though modern medicine no longer relies on chants or incantations, the psychological power of sound remains undeniable. The medieval use of music and spoken word as healing tools offers a poignant reminder that in the darkest of times, a simple melody or a whispered prayer could be enough to stir hope and perhaps even restore health. The mysterious healing methods of the Middle Ages end here, but the stories are far from over. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, more episodes are coming soon.